Well, lots of people ask me, what it is about this government that I'm opposed to, and I could go through and list all the different things, the cuts in work rights, the cuts in night school, early childhood education, GST increases, tax cuts to the rich, you could go on. But actually I think the most dangerous thing about this government is the way that they are painting a picture of working people. They're telling a story which basically depicts workers as beneficiaries and employers as benefactors, that work is a charity and that workers should be grateful, shouldn't bite the hand that feeds them, should feel lucky to have a job, and that employers should be revered and all deference shown to them. And there's actually really good examples of this which we can see over the last year. So the first one obviously is around the making of the film The Hobbit. During that dispute, which was simply about a group of performers seeking to collectively negotiate their terms and conditions, the rhetoric from the government around Warner's and Peter Jackson that they were the great benefactors providing jobs to New Zealand when jobs were much needed, but they should be shown all deference, and that the performers were uppity, ungrateful, biting the hand that feeds them, and in the end deserved everything they got: the complete removal of their rights as workers, making them all contractors, and a payment to Warner's as a form of sort of apology for our workers in New Zealand daring to want something as basic as their employment rights. The second example is Pike River mine. That mine, it exploded 1 year after it had opened, and it killed 29 men, including a 17-year-old kid on his first day down there. And immediately after that blast, that mine was portrayed as a great employer on the coast, providing much needed jobs to a community where there was high unemployment, a great benefactor, and those workers were portrayed, including by the Prime Minister, as bravely taking the risk of mining, knowing what they were getting into, but prepared to take that risk to get the coal out. And actually, that isn't what happened at Pike River. Effectively, a group of shareholders decided that there was value in that mine, invested their money, which is fine, they were entitled to do that. Whether they underinvested is something that the inquiry into Pike River will now determine. But it looks likely that there was an underinvestment in safety. And when that mine exploded, those shareholders, they packed up, they moved on to the next investment, and they left behind them death and debt and accountability. And that is not a charitable model. That is can't be described as a charitable model, yet that was how it was being depicted. And those workers were exchanging their labour for wages with Pike River. Pike River was not feeding them, and there was no charity at work in that situation. And the media have also picked up on this narrative. So when the government put up the minimum wage by 25 cents, a couple of very brave workers from McDonald's went on TV3 and said simply it's just not enough to live on. They couldn't pay their bills on $13 an hour, they couldn't pay their rent, they couldn't move on with their lives. And TV3 ran the headline, "Two workers were prepared to bite the hand that feeds them," because that's the story, that workers are being fed by McDonald's. They're not exchanging their labour for wages. It's a charitable model. They should shut up and be grateful. And then recently, when the PSA and the Service and Food Workers Union had a magnificent victory for workers who sleep over in houses looking after disabled people, simply for them to be paid the minimum wage for doing that, TV1 ran the headline that some workers were getting a windfall. Not that they were being repaid wages that they had been unpaid, that they were entitled to the minimum wage and effectively being ripped off for all the last few years, but that they were getting a windfall. So this is a very dangerous narrative that's being painted about working people. Within this story, there's no role for unions, there's no role for workers to organise or seek more. They should simply shut up and be grateful for the charity that they're receiving, and that's the most dangerous thing about this government.